It almost feels like just yesterday I was planting new seeds in my garden, dreaming of what Mother Nature and I could achieve together with the resources we had available this year. And before I knew it, it was the season of the first harvest. Time flies by so quickly, especially during years like this one for me, where a lot happened. And it's incredible to see the fruit of our labor come to life, even amidst the challenges we may have faced along the way. The vibrant colors of the flowers, the lush green leaves, and the bountiful harvest are a testament to the hard work and dedication we put into nurturing our gardens, and they're also a metaphor for the fulfillment and growth we can achieve when we tend our inner garden. It's a reminder that with patience and care, beautiful things can grow and flourish, even in seemingly not ideal circumstances. Even if, like me, you have limited space and sunlight, I've learned that there's always a way to connect with the magic and beauty of nature. Whether you have a small balcony, a tiny backyard, or even just a few pots on your windowsill, you can create a thriving garden that brings joy and tranquility to your life. And what I've discovered, again, especially during a really tough year where a lot happened and I lost a family member, staying dedicated both to my self-care and to tending my garden as a form of ritual has really helped me to stay grounded and to even grow and thrive amidst really difficult circumstances. Do you ever feel like time passes strangely when there's a lot going on in your life or when major transitions are taking place? It does for me. Summer seemed to fly by this year, and the fall season seemed to really creep up on me. Even though we had heat waves on and off right into October, it seemed to take a bit longer than usual for me to feel like it was time for summer to be over. I think maybe because I had been sort of clinging to summer as a sort of coping mechanism, spending as much time outdoors as possible as self-care and mental health care while grieving my lost relative. Yet all the same, when the leaves did start to change and we had our first little cold snap in between the heat waves, I still felt that old familiar sense of coming home. Autumn is still my favorite season after all, and as always, I felt a sense of rebirth or renewal when I started noticing signs of the season changing. Even amidst challenges and uncertainty in life, there have been just as many moments of peace, fulfillment, joy, and personal gnosis as the season of balance got underway. As the days grew shorter and the air turned crisper, I found myself reflecting on the passing of time and the importance of embracing each season as it comes, both literally and figuratively. It's easy to get caught up in the busyness of life and overlook the beauty and significance of the present moment. But autumn serves as a gentle reminder to slow down, to savor the simple pleasures, and to appreciate the natural rhythms of life. There are some nature-based spiritual folks who feel that the generic dates for the witches' seasonal sabbats are less relevant to them than certain landmark moments that indicate to them that the season has actually arrived. Be that their first fall-colored leaf that they notice, noticing the elongating shadows as the days begin to grow shorter, or feeling a shift in temperature. And while I do truly appreciate the magic of the astrological solstices, equinoxes, and cross quarters, you know that I find it just as important to be in tune with your own personal seasons and what nature is doing around you. This was definitely one of those years in particular where noticing those nostalgic little shifts was more prominent for me than simply following the pagan calendar. But at the same time, there are also those more predictable structural traditions that serve as sort of reality checks of how far into the year we actually are. The Empowered Modern Witches Summit is one of those things for me. It takes place every year on the week of the Autumn Equinox, and I've been honored to be both a speaker and an attendee for all 4 years that it's been running so far. It's something I look forward to every year, and whether I'm in full-blown fall mode by that point in the year, or if I'm just beginning to slow down and tap into that fall energy, it serves as a solid calendar marker to kick off what many consider the season of the witch. It was lovely that this year the weather was still warm and I was able to attend some of the workshops and rituals outside in my garden, celebrating the magic of autumn both physically and virtually. This year's summit has ended now, but if you missed it, be sure to follow me and the Witch of Lupin Hollow to catch it next time, and just to be in the loop about seasonal magic and self-care year-round, because we are both absolutely obsessed with this idea of tapping into the energy of the seasons and the stars to help guide us to experience more fulfillment every single day. For me, one of the most important and persistent themes of the autumn equinox since I started my practice has been turning inward toward the hearth and home. Since this has been a year of really leaning into my kitchen magic, it feels like it's even more so home and hearth vibes than usual this time of year. I'll tell you the truth, I used to be one of those witches who cleans and stashes every glass bottle or jar that came through her home, but really only ever put a few of them to use here and there. But now I'm putting my collection to good use, and I'm surrounded by bottles and jars in a whole new way. On any given day, there's some kind of kitchen witchy potion that needs a little tending to, and I always take this as an opportunity to clear my mind and speak my spells over them. Whether I'm feeding my sourdough starter, checking in on my home brews, bottling a freshly harvested dried herb, or turning it into a tincture, I'm always weaving a bit of magic into everything that I do. In a way, I think part of my inspiration for taking up these traditional slow-living kitchen practices was that I wanted harvest season, and all year round for that matter, to feel like an authentic real-life version of that cottage witch aesthetic that so many of us find inspiring. Especially this time of year when witches and muggles alike are decorating their houses for Halloween, we all fantasize about a cozy kitchen with a cauldron on the stove and bottles and jars filled with who knows what. Well, rather than having a cauldron just for decoration, or even just for spell work, and filling jars with random twigs and moss to create an aesthetic, I've made it a real part of my life to be genuinely tending to types of potions that could really be of use in my everyday life, which for me is mostly about food and other edible or medicinal plants. My kitchen cauldron is a big black stock pot used for canning jars, and my jars are filled with, say, pickled beets from my garden, and all kinds of other fun and useful substances. And that's not at all to say that there's any shame in decorating with fake cauldrons or moss and twigs in jars to create an aesthetic. There's definitely a time and place for that, and I've happily done it myself many times. And of course, some witches really are into things like spell bottles and magical potions, which is awesome for them. But for me, leaning more and more into what genuinely feels authentic in my personal practice often feels less about spellcraft at the altar or having an abundance of items to use solely in my witchy practice, and more so about adding magic and mindfulness into the other interests that I have in my life. I'm naturally a very creative person, and so my creative energy also gets to be my magical energy. While I still do love a more formal spell or ritual at the altar, on a new or full moon, on a Sabbath, or just when I'm really feeling called to it, I almost feel like those practices are just the ceremonies that initiate or celebrate the magical lifestyle that I've already been constantly cultivating on a daily basis between those rituals. And one of the definitions of the word ritual is something that's done repetitively with intention. This doesn't just have to be in a formal ceremonial setting of any kind. It can be how you repeat your affirmations in your head every morning while you shower, tuning into how the water can shift your energy, or repeating a word spell for an intention as you cut vegetables and store them for future use. While I would never say I'm a minimalist, I do believe in reducing waste and keeping only those things which are helpful or bring you joy. So especially this time of year when so many people are spending money and space on artificial harvest or witch-themed decorations, often made of single-use plastic, unfortunately, I've kind of made it my mission to be a mindful maximalist when it comes to aligning my aesthetics with my actual desired lifestyle. I wanted to really be a green kitchen witch, not just have my house look like one. So I really stepped into that role by learning how to cook, properly store food, and get more in the habit of seeing food as medicine. Whether it's literally knowing, growing, and using medicinal herbs, or just choosing healthier and less wasteful kitchen practices, when it comes to what we put in our bodies, we get out of it what we put into it, both physically and energetically. One of the most magical things for me is feeling connected to the cycle of the earth, and what better way to do that than to really put mindfulness, intentionality, and a little bit of slow living into my kitchen. And speaking of connecting my kitchen witch practice with Mother Earth, there's the small matter of a giant mushroom. Once upon a time, when my sister spent the summer with her roommate's family in New Hampshire after college, she learned how to identify and harvest wild edible mushrooms with her friend's dad. The prize of the season was the coveted chicken of the woods, a somewhat rare fungus that's found growing on or at the base of dead or dying hardwood trees. And for perhaps the first time since that epic rainy mushroom hunt in the forests of New Hampshire a decade ago, my sister spotted it once again on a walking path near her house around the autumn equinox this year. While at first I had my moment of paranoia about eating strange fungi, once I was sure it was what she said it was, this turned out to be quite a magical manifestation for me. I've been vegetarian for over 20 years now, and I'm always looking to diversify my diet when it comes to healthy meatless proteins. When I was a teen, I used to eat a lot of heavily processed vegan foods, which back then was made up of primarily soy, which as it turns out really isn't that great for the body. Once I had a better understanding of proper nutrition and began my intuitive eating journey as an adult, I cut back my soy intake pretty dramatically and also just started eating less processed foods in general. And of course, this year in particular, I've really been learning and leaning more and more into more natural food options as much as possible. Now, just the week before the discovery of the mushroom, I had been researching and shopping around for some kind of chicken alternative that was soy-free, less processed, and preferably more versatile than those breaded chick patties you can find at places like Whole Foods. I wanted something I could really feel good about putting in my body that I could also use to make something resembling a cozy chicken noodle soup for the fall, for example. Well, the answer came in the form of my sister with this perfect solution. Interestingly enough, this free and natural food source has turned out to be the best chicken substitute I have ever tried. In fact, when I tried a really fresh piece of it in breaded form, it reminded me more of chicken than anything that I've had in the past 20 years, and my sister, who eats chicken regularly, agreed. And to make this harvest celebration even more abundant, we ended up finding not just that oversized fungus near my sister's home, but she also spotted a fresher specimen at her local park as well. Now, apparently, you're lucky to even find a tiny amount of this, let alone what turned out to be enough to probably last me a year in the freezer. Now, if this isn't the icing on the cake of my year of foraging, I don't know what would be. I am so grateful to Mother Earth and to my sister for helping this come to fruition. So, a few tips for my fellow foragers if you happen to find this. First things first, if you find it and it's going to be any kind of warm or hot or sunny weather coming up, I would recommend harvesting it immediately. My sister and I at first weren't sure how we were going to like it, so we just took a little bit, and by the time we were able to get back to harvest the rest of it a few days later, it had already started to kind of dry out a little bit in the sun. Now, it was definitely still edible, including the worst parts of it, which were basically just like extremely dry, maybe overcooked chicken. And it's still totally edible. I would recommend using that part in a little bit more of a processed meal. Like, I actually put it in the food processor and turned it into sort of burger patties. But the best parts were the fresher, newer parts that were growing at the tips, which was more kind of like, I want to say, the texture of a wing, except that wings totally always grossed me out. So imagine the texture of a wing, but without the grossness of it being an animal's limb. But I'm guessing that if we would have harvested the whole thing on the first day that my sister noticed it, it probably would have been tender a lot more of the way through. As for the second one we found, it was extremely fresh and bright orange one day, and then literally the next day on what was still a relatively cool overcast day, since it wasn't shaded by any trees, it completely changed color. Now this one was much more fresh and tender than the other one was, but I have a feeling it would have been even better if we would have harvested it sooner. So if you find this growing in a public place, you might actually want to harvest it right away, or at least harvest part of it for yourself, because there's probably other mushroom hunters out there. We did find one more really small one that we were going to allow to continue to grow for a while because it was under some tree cover, but we noticed that a few days later it was gone. So somebody else lucked out and got that one, which is totally fine because I have more than enough. If you happen to find this in a place where it isn't likely that anyone else will get it and you want to let it grow, make sure that it is in a shaded area, otherwise it will probably dry out on you. Happy hunting! Lately, I've been doing something a little bit different for me in my witchy practice: deity work. Now, returning viewers and podcast listeners may know that I have some strong air placements in my astrology, and my magical practice is primarily psychological. I've even gone so far as to call myself a skeptical witch in the past because I don't have a deep sense of faith in a lot of the more woo-woo concepts that other spiritual folks are into. I haven't worked a lot with gods and goddesses in my practice because my core belief is that the only thing we really need to believe in is ourselves. I tend to think of gods and goddesses as cultural personifications of universal archetypes that exist within us all. I've always been inspired by their stories and have evoked their themes at times in my life when I could benefit from embodying them. But I don't tend to believe that they're literally sentient beings that have power over us that we have to pray to, like I did the Abrahamic God when I was a child, for example. That's not a belief system that I'm interested in returning to in any particular way. But that being said, though, I have had some interesting experiences that have me a little bit more curious about what could be possible by working with these archetypes more closely now. Comment below and let me know if you'd be interested in me going deeper on some of these interesting stories in a future video. This year, I've gotten tons of signs from Persephone, an archetype related to the cycle of nature that's spoken to me many times throughout my witchy journey. But it's been a lot more prominent lately, which does make sense in the context of the year I've had where death and rebirth have been a constant theme, both literally and figuratively. For the past few years, I've been including a representation of Persephone on my seasonal altar during the harvest season, but this year I felt called to give her more of her own place and started giving more consistent offerings. Interestingly, every time I've seen a sign related to Persephone, I compost the previous offering and give a fresh one, and this system has had me updating the offering pretty frequently. Being the practical witch that I am, I'm not just going based on signs I see online, knowing that sometimes target marketing and algorithms are a factor. But I've also gotten signs in YouTube videos that were totally unrelated to witchcraft, as well as in print in non-witchy related publications, like when I was flicking through an animal charities newsletter and noticed a rescued cat named Persephone. Or when I was watching a YouTube video about gardening and halfway through this really long video, all of a sudden there was a pomegranate plant, which I had never even seen on a gardening channel before. So I'm practicing what I preach about being open-minded and trying new things in my practice as I feel intuitively called. And I'm taking this as a sign to really analyze why I'm manifesting these signs and how the story and symbolism of Persephone can benefit me in the transitional phase of life that I'm in right now. There have been some really exciting developments in my life and my spell work recently, which I'm really excited to tell you more about in an upcoming video. So it is the week of the Autumn Equinox, and as you can see behind me, it's starting to turn fall outside, and we're going to turn it more fall inside. Now, full disclosure, those of you who have been watching my channel since last year or the year before, you know that this tree is a little bit deceptive. That is the only tree that I think I've seen anywhere in town that is that orange already. It starts to turn bright orange at the end of August, and we are now in the middle, hello Mowgli, in the middle of September. So I get the kind of magic of fall a little bit early here, but I'm gonna take it as an excuse that has been orange for a month and the rest is starting to change a little bit to change some stuff up in here. Mowgli will be our helper as usual. So for a quick bird's eye view of what's going on in here, this was once upon a time my August Eve / Lammas / Lunasa altar. You guys who have been here know that normally it's right under the air conditioner. There has been some crazy stuff going on with that air conditioner, and it was supposed to be fixed. They didn't really fix it. They were just messing with it for a while, and I don't think they're gonna fix it. So I'm going to redo my altar, but we're gonna go Autumn Equinox vibes. This side of the room is not too bad actually. So if you've been watching, you know that I've had a crazy year, including a death in my family and just lots of other crazy stuff going on. So I have been using, practicing what I preach really, and decorating in a way that can last for a while. So I did this sort of almost August Eve style summer setup, a little bit closer to the summer solstice, knowing that I needed to keep it up for a few months because I wasn't going to have time to mess with it. I chose to use these sort of yellow flowers that are very late summer, early fall, and just some sort of dried looking stuff that is kind of seasonless. I started decorating with corn in early August, knowing that it would carry over to fall. I've got my fake fruit here. I did pears for the late summer, but I think I'm gonna switch over to more apples now. And I started the whole harvest vibe situation in August as well, because that is kind of the start of harvest season, and then it carries all the way through to November. But it is time for some of this stuff to be switched out. So like this one has some yellows in it, but it's kind of really giving summer vibes, and it's time to really shift this more into fall. Yeah, the office is a little bit of a mess right now too. I'm in the middle of a ton of different projects, and I've had a ton of technical difficulties lately. This year has felt like one big Mercury retrograde, but it's also actually Mercury retrograde, so things are not running according to schedule, but we're making it work. But what I am gonna do is at least tidy up this area over here that is mainly just decor that I've been waiting to put up. So I'm gonna put it up and I'm gonna clean it up. And to be honest, one of the technical difficulties that I'm dealing with is that I've been running out of space on all of my devices. As you guys probably know, I film anything and everything that looks beautiful and magical in my life. It's part of my spiritual practice, honestly, as well as part of my career. But I use a lot of memory on technology. And so I am actually gonna film the majority of this video in the sped up format so that I'm not just filming a bunch of long content that's going to take up space and that's going to lead to technical difficulties. I am working on cleaning up my memory, deleting old videos that I don't really need anymore, as well as catching up on showing you guys all of the beautiful footage that I've got in over the summertime that I haven't had the time to actually put in videos. So it's an ongoing project. But I just wanted to kind of pop on here and actually say hello to you guys in just like a regular one-on-one format, because I know I've been doing a lot of artsy videos lately, which is honestly the goal for me. I am an artist, I'm a filmmaker, and I'm not letting challenges stop me from doing the art form that I love. But I know it's also important to just kind of show you guys behind the scenes and the fact that things are not perfect, even though we like to show the beautiful things in videos. So that being said, hello, hi, how are you? Let's go ahead and go back into fast forward and just get some stuff done. I will invite you to stay tuned to the end though. I will do a final walkthrough of everything, not in fast forward. popping in, magical mavens? I hope you're enjoying this super sped up version of my fall decorating. So I just wanted to talk to you really quickly about some books. So as you may know, I am sort of building a home library. And I have probably about 200 books at this point in my life, and I just got some new ones. Now, the reason why I'm showing you these books right now is because I always like to show you guys a quick book haul when I find some fun thrifted witchy books, and because this decorating scheme involves me having to completely redo my library. I've tried out quite a few different library organizing hacks or whatever, everything from alphabetized to color-coded to rainbow. Sometimes I just do it purely for decorating, for pulling out whatever books represent the season at hand. That is what I'm going to be doing in this particular video, but since I did get a stack of new books, I took this as an opportunity to completely massive overhaul the whole library situation and make it aesthetic for fall. Let me invite you to take a little trip back in time with me for a moment. Way back in June, my sister invited me to go on a little adventure with her. She had spotted some broom corn growing in an accessible spot near the highway exit, and she wanted to harvest some for her artwork. If you aren't already one of the hundreds of thousands of followers she has on TikTok and Instagram, she's an epoxy resin artist and she uses natural materials and oddities in her work. Her handle is TK Farid if you're curious. I harvested some too, which was a brave move on my part because in the past, I've been super allergic to broomcorn. You see, I have a tradition of replacing my witchy broom whenever I either move house or I'm just ready for a massive overhaul of the energy in my home. I always burn or compost the previous broom to represent releasing the dust of my past chapter and getting a clean sweep of my energy. Clean sweep. Wasn't that the name of like a cheesy, outdated Harry Potter broom or something? Something that didn't even compare to the Nimbus 2000, let alone the firebolts. Anyway, this tradition was inspired by a Wiccan spell I read about nearly a decade ago now when I was first getting started with my witchy journey. Kind of ever since day one, a big part of my practice and path has been about manifesting a more and more aligned domestic situation. I guess that's part of what I'm here to learn, and this tradition has always been something that has really resonated with me. Well, for one of my new brooms some years back, I made my own out of what I learned at that time was called broomcorn, which many of us see growing everywhere, especially by the side of highways where I live for some reason. Well, it seems to make perfectly good sense why its common name would be broomcorn, since it seems perfect for making a DIY broom. Only there's one little problem with that. It sheds fluffy stuff everywhere, and some of us are quite allergic to it. It's kind of like the opposite of cleaning, in fact, but I believe when it's perfectly weathered after having sit out in the elements for probably a year or more, it takes on a more bristly texture and loses its fluff. This harvest was a little bit fluffy still, but I haven't been sneezing much around it, so I'm counting this one as a win. In any case, it's not something I plan on actually sweeping with. It's just a symbol of having good witchy energy in my home and starting a fresh new chapter. Have you ever made your own broom before, or do you have any broom traditions or practices? I would love to hear about them in the comments. And now it's time to sit down, chill out for a minute, and simply do some seasonal journaling. Now, if you're new around here, welcome. I'm Afura, the Writing Witch, and if you're a returning viewer, you know that what we do over here is we journal. Journaling for self-gnosis and journaling with the seasons to experience more fulfillment in alignment with the natural seasonal energies. I have a Patreon community called the Writing Witch Coven, and that is where I share all of the journal prompts that I have come up with over the last decade of studying the seasonal energies and incorporating them into my life. I'm also an artist, so I designed all of these beautiful printable grimoire pages, and on Patreon I also have these prompts scheduled to post on certain days of the season, including new moons, first quarter moons, full moons, last quarter moons, and of course an entire seasonal challenge consisting of 5 prompts that we do in the 6 weeks surrounding each of the 8 calendar holidays of the witches. I like to always do my journaling first and then go ahead and share what I came up with my patrons in the community. And I love seeing what the other Coven members come up with as their responses to these journal prompts as well. If this is something that you would like to do with us anonymously or communally, you can do either one. The Patreon community is called a community because it is an opportunity to connect with myself and other witches. But if you're shy, or if you just want to get the printables and the physical copies that you get in the mail of my pages and follow along with the prompts without necessarily chiming in, you are welcome to do that as well. To sign up, the link will be on the screen right now, and I'll also have it linked down below. As I'm posting this, we are just getting started with our Samhain / November's Eve / Halloween seasonal journaling challenge. It is going to be so much fun because it is my favorite time of year, and if you're here, it might be your favorite time of year too. So I hope to see you over there. After this long spring and summer of really tapping into the energy of nature, spending as much time outdoors as possible, and learning to forage and give thanks to Mother Earth for what I'm able to find, I have kind of started a little bit of a new practice. I like to bring a bag with me. It's a reusable bag. I know that one looks like a plastic bag. Every time I go for a walk in nature, and I allow myself to either fill this bag with things that I discover that I can forage and use in my practice, or to just pick up trash. If I'm going to be taking from nature, I also want to be giving back to nature. And unfortunately, a lot of people feel the need to litter in our beautiful parks. And while thankfully I have seen less of this lately than I have some previous years, especially during the pandemic when everyone and their mom was outside wreaking havoc in some cases, but every once in a while, unfortunately, I do still see some garbage. So this was one of those trips where I intended to do some foraging, didn't find anything that I really felt the need to harvest, and so I instead just did a little bit of cleaning up, giving back to Mother Earth. And now for a little change of scenery, let's relax for a minute, sit in the garden as it's slowly transitioning into fall, and do a little flip through of one of my Starlight magazines. So I get a ton of questions every time people see me putting my Starlight magazines into library decor. What is that magazine and where can I get it? It's called Starlight Magazine. It's by my friend and colleague Tanae Stewart, the Witch of Lupin Hollow, and I've been fortunate to be able to be a contributor to this magazine for I want to say about 2 years now. I think my first one was the winter edition of 2021, so quite a while ago. I absolutely love not just contributing to this magazine, but also just reading it. Tanae has this really awesome skill of bringing together various different diverse witches from different cultural backgrounds with different belief systems and giving them a platform to speak about different ways to practice magic. So this magazine in particular is one that came out last year during the fall, and since I was really excited for the new one to arrive and was waiting for it, I decided to reread it because unlike some magazines where the content is no longer relevant after that season, a lot of the articles in these are relevant indefinitely. They're on topics like astrology and the seasons and rituals and gods and goddesses and secular witchcraft and literally anything that you can think of. And they always really embody the energies and the themes of the season in which they are published. And really exciting news, if you missed an issue or if you weren't able to get your hands on a physical copy, you can actually go for a more affordable option that is indefinite, where you can always purchase back issues in PDF form. So I believe this one is still available in PDF form. And stay tuned to the end of the video where I actually got the new edition in the mail and did the flip through for that one. That one's really exciting because I actually submitted some hand-painted artwork for my article that time, which was kind of a manifestation for me because I've really been wanting to prioritize leaning back into my original art forms from my youth. And if you want to support this channel, a lot of work goes into making these videos, guys. This one in particular was kind of a doozy because there's just a lot going on in my life right now. Ordering the magazine is actually one way to do that. I receive a commission for every magazine that is sold with my affiliate link. So that link will be on the screen now, and it'll also be linked down below. Thank you so much to all of you who have already purchased magazines this year. It has been really helpful to me, and I'm also just really excited that all of these amazing articles by all of these different amazing witches are getting into the hands of people who can really be inspired by them. time for a little bit of glamour magic for fall. So many of you guys have actually commented and asked me to do a fashion video, and funnily enough, I actually started my whole online blogging lifestyle as a fashion blogger when I was in college. I was not popular. You've probably never seen me anywhere. I was on Lookbook, however, but it wasn't something that really stuck with me as a career path, but I love fashion. So I decided to do a little bit of a glamour spell to transform from my spring summer witch to my fall winter witch. I have been on and off a goth versus like a girly girl for various chapters throughout my life, and now I've realized it is actually kind of seasonal. So now I switch over on the equinoxes. I have a bunch more outfits to show you for our little autumn glamour spell, but I had to take a pause because the magazine arrived. Let's dive in.